I guess I feel super fortunate to be in a place like Boise that has such a huge Basque population, which is so unusual in the United States. I couldn't help but be fascinated when we first moved here. The name of the piece is Arrantza, and that is a Basque word for fishing, which to me has two pertinent meanings. One being that fishing to the Basque culture in the Basque region is it's a pretty big part of culture, and it's really important. But at the same time, it speaks to my role as an outsider and how I approach a culture that I have nothing to do with. And it really is like a process of just casting a line out and seeing if something great or nutritious or beautiful or interesting comes back. And then if that's the case, follow that path or eat some fish. And then if not, casting it back into seeing kind of what comes up next. Because there's just no way I could say, well, this is the authoritative view on Basque culture, and this is what it means. Not at all. It's always going to be my perspective from where I stand. How it came about. I mean, there's a lot of, in some ways, a lot of really natural connections because classical ballet came from Basque dance. There was Basque dance, and then there was classical ballet. And so, even in costuming, for example, the way shoes are laced up, pretty much the same way that point shoes are laced up today. In terms of vocabulary, I mean, there will be entire phrases where it's even structured just like classical ballet. It's just the technique is different. Very strong local Basque dance community has been so generous in helping us and coming into the studio and teaching the dancers of the company Basque dance, because I had no idea going into this to what extent the piece would reference traditional Basque dance. But I wanted, from the dancer's perspective, that to the extent that it did, that they would approach it with some authority and at least some knowledge. It would be stupid for us to just have the dancers be doing Basque folk dance. I mean, there's nothing in that. But to have them start from their knowledgeable place and demonstrate the hotat, I could riff off of those rhythms and what does it feel like the actual impetus and meaning of the hotat is. And then use that as a launching place. And so, because they've had that experience in the class with Basque dancers, could still, in some ways, do it in the style and still kind of understand how to shape a different movement that's not from that culture, and to create something new. It was the same idea working with Sandra Woodall, who's a frequent collaborator in making these costumes. That the clothes would reference specific things about culture, but not replicate Basque costumes. Really looking at a culture from an outside and finding some perspective from your own life with which to see it and interpret it. The music came about working with, for the most part, local Basque musicians, and we went into the studio and basically started with original folk tunes, and then just tried different ways of structuring it, maybe switching the key, switching something to a minor key. Finding new ways of phrasing that's so still presented a traditional melody, but maybe a new way of looking at it. Things that kind of floated to the surface are how different elements of day-to-day speech, singing, and dancing reflect one another, tonally, in terms of rhythm. In the Basque language, in a sentence, I'm told, ends with the subject. So you're waiting for the entire sentence to even know what it is that you're talking about. So that idea to explore choreographically is really a natural component. I've been collecting oral histories of different Basque people, so those, like the literal storytelling, there's snippets of people's stories that kind of interweave through the piece. Storytelling is a huge part of Basque culture. Any question is generally answered in the form of a story. So the piece is kind of a process of uncovering a storytelling, and it's done in a way that's kind of the way you might float through information in a dream. Uncover some of this, uncover some of this part of it, and it really doesn't. It doesn't kind of wrap up into a linear form or into a complete story until all the pieces are there in the end.